Hi, Christina. It's great to meet you, and thank you so much for joining me today. Before we dive in, can you tell me a bit about yourself, how you discovered carnivore? How did it all start for you?
Yes. Hi, my name's Christina Clark, and that's Christina without an H. And I have been dealing with some health issues since 2010. And so I had a complicated relationship with food in my body and exercise for years. And I hired a coach back in 2019 to deal with that. But before that, I had something called leaky gut, and I struggled with UTIs and interstitial cystitis and a lot of skin issues and just bloating, swelling, digestive things. So in 2010, I was told to avoid gluten, dairy, soy, peanuts, and corn. And people thought, oh my gosh, how do you eat? Like, what do you eat? And I was like, whole foods, those things that don't have sugar and processed foods in them. And so that went on for a while. I had a lot of issues with that where I would actually get so sick because I would still eat out and I would give them all the instructions and they would mess it up. And then we'd be driving home and I would be extremely ill. And my leaky gut would be like sharp stabbing pain, swelling, extreme swelling. And I really needed some kind of solution. So the doctor that I saw, she was a gut specialist. She said, just avoid these foods. There was like no help with it. It was just avoid them and don't get cross contaminated, basically. So I worked at that for a long time. And then in 2022, I went to a convention in Florida and I went by myself and, it wasn't that stressful or anything, but I believed I got cross contaminated because I was there. It was a 3-day trip, and I was there the first day. I felt like I had eaten gluten. So my body started to swell. I could hardly fit any of my clothes. I had to go to all the events anyway, because I'd invested in it and it was something important for my business. So I went and just did all the things. And when I got home, I thought, it only takes 3 days for it to pass. It didn't pass. So I was 7 months of every time I ate something, I had a reaction. And I didn't know what to do. I was pretty much staying home a lot because there was no way to leave the house as sick as I got. And it really messed with me mentally and physically. So a friend of mine who's in the coach world, he actually reached out to me, he lives in California, and he said, hey, you're like allergic to almost everything. Maybe you should look into Michaela Peterson and watch her Joe Rogan interview. And I was like, whatever. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, she eats meat and she doesn't have inflammation and all these things you have going on. So I was like, that sounds dangerous. I don't think it's a good idea. He was like, well, why don't you just watch the interview and see what you think? And so I watched the interview before I went to bed. And the next day I got up and I spent 60 hours that week doing research and looking up all the doctors in carnivore, all the experts, and other women like me who were successfully doing carnivore. So in doing that, it helped me to see that it was not a dangerous thing, and also it helped me to see that if I could make it the 21-day transition, that I could actually transfer fuel sources and start going from glucose burner to fat burner. And I was super excited about it, but I was nervous because I always have like Herxheimer or I have some kind of healing crisis, some kind of detox, and it's always a lot. So I told my husband, I was like, so I'm going to do carnivore. And he was like, that sounds dangerous. I don't think that's a good idea. And I was like, maybe we've been told, all this nonsense. And maybe based on what I'm looking at, and I didn't just jump into it all willy nilly and just like try it. I got electrolytes. I prepared for it. And I didn't know so much well, I did learn from Michaela, but I didn't know for me if I had like all these things about aged meat and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't really know. But I went into it committed to 21 days. And he said, like, you better know what you're talking about and all this. And I was like, look, I've learned from a lot of doctors and I think this is going to be fine as long as I can make it 21 days. So I did that and it was a nightmare. I was actually so exhausted and fatigued while I was going through the process that I couldn't even hold my head up. And my husband was like, I don't think you're going to make it through this. I think you should quit. And I was like, no, I can't quit. I'm already in it to win it. Like I just have to keep going and I just have to stay focused. And he was like, okay. So on day 18, about halfway through the day, I started noticing like I was able to stand up straight. I had energy. My brain came back online. Like, you know, how these people talk about having all this mental focus. Well, that happened. And I was so excited because I had been so down about all of this for, 7 months. And I was just really looking forward to feeling normal again and feeling like I could do something with my life. And like it wasn't, because it seemed pretty doom and gloom when you can't just eat food and feel normal. But I basically, I learned a hard lesson in the beginning because I tried to eat pork chops and chicken and ground beef. And I literally got a histamine response that caused me to feel like I had a cold for 3 weeks straight. And so I was like, well, we won't be doing that anymore. And then I kind of like, I ate some ribeye. I couldn't eat conventional meat. I still can't eat conventional meat. And it's interesting. I do eat these burger patties that are flash frozen. They're natural. So I don't know what they feed them, but they agree with me. And I can eat some ribeyes, but I actually, when I eat meat they do something to the cow, they do something to them near the end, I'll know, and I can't eat it. So, but it's interesting that we're told for our entire lives that we should avoid red meat, we should avoid saturated fat, we should avoid salt, and we should avoid the sun. These are things I have an issue with because these are the things that are healing to our bodies, and this is what we need. And I literally, in just probably about a few months, I actually hired a carnivore doctor too along the way. And I lost weight, which was amazing, right? Looking back now, I didn't realize how overweight I was back when I started carnivore, but I lost, IC, which is interstitial cystitis. I lost, all the leaky gut problems and all the digestive issues. I lost the, eczema that breaks out on my legs occasionally. I lost most of the acne. Right now I'm doing the lion diet to just go deeper on the healing. But it's been life-changing for me. And I think that if I wouldn't have been that sick, I might not have been open to it because I think that it takes a little bit of a strong why in order for you to actually focus and go that way. So
I think that's awesome. You know how you took the time to figure out, like doing the research with Michaela Peterson, and you paid attention to what really worked for you. I think with the help of carnivore, I think that's really cool. How long you been carnivore now? I think you mentioned it. I just missed it.
yeah, so I've been carnivore since April 14th of 2023. So I'm coming up on my 3-year carniversary. I'm very excited about that. I started carnivore, so I'm
That's
52,
pretty
just so you know. Yeah, I started carnivore when I was 49. So it's been interesting. I don't have hot flashes. I don't have all of the things that go with menopause, perimenopause, aging for women. I don't have those on carnivore. Now, if I eat off carnivore or before I started carnivore, all those symptoms happen because I think they're really attached to the nutrients or the lack of nutrients in the food.
That's pretty awesome. I know you mentioned you had a lot of food allergies. I think you mentioned 2010, and you became allergic to them. What were those some that you mentioned? Like, I think you also with the cross contamination with the food. Like, what were the symptoms you experienced? Like, I'm thinking since it's been 2010, you've been dealing with them for quite a while. Like, what were you like? The symptoms like you experienced?
So overall, the most toxic food that I had to deal with was gluten. So in 2010, I actually went on a missions trip out to like South Dakota and North Dakota. Actually, I was in North Dakota and we were serving some people, and I was in like a thrift store, and we were moving things around and cleaning. And we had gone to, I think we went to Subway that day, and I had a big sub, and suddenly out of nowhere, I swole up like the size of maybe 6 month pregnant. And so my clothes were extremely tight. I didn't have any other clothes with me. There's nothing I could do. And I had no idea what it was. So of course it happened over and over on this trip, which we were there for several days. And I came home and I was like, oh my gosh. So stabbing pain, It feels like you have knives in your lower stomach, and then extreme swelling to where your skin hurts because you're just so bloated and swollen. And just very bad as far as like how I felt mentally. Just felt super down and like so frustrated and upset. I'm just unsure of how I was going to fix it. And, gluten, it was dairy, also causes that kind of, not as extreme as the gluten, but, swelling, irritation, inflammation, yuck, just, terrible feeling. And I knew when, there were a lot of vegetables that I used to eat that I would wonder, why do I feel bad after I eat these vegetables? I would make like zucchini and squash and I would like fry it up and it was so delicious, but then I would get so sick after I ate it. And I just wondered about that. And I was like, why is it that everybody else can eat all these things and I can't eat them? So yeah, it was very, very upsetting. And it messes with your mind when you eat. And I ate lots of spinach smoothies and lots of sweet potatoes and, lots of things that I didn't know anything about at the time. So it's just been interesting to go from being sick all the time. So when something happens to me now on carnivore, I will be super sensitive because like if something gets cross contaminated or introduced, I'll just literally be like, uh-oh. So I take some charcoal and I move on. But yeah, I got to be super careful because other people don't really respect the fact that, because I did eat out at restaurants still as a carnivore. I would take my ghee with me or my butter and my salt, and I'd give them all these explicit instructions. And usually it went well. But overall, I just rather eat at home. So I know what's in the food. I carried my food with me. I went to Hack Your Health and I actually cooked all of my burger patties, got all of my tallow together. I had everything portioned out in glass dishes and I took it with me on the plane and I took it with me to the event. I never ate anything that was off plan except when I got invited to Dr. Kilt's, his Mighty Tribe dinner. They ate out and I ate there and I didn't get sick, which was amazing. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Wow, that's a really awesome experience how you like manage everything now. I know you mentioned like leaky gut, eczema, and acne. Like after living with all these health issues for years, I had the same problem in the past when I was younger. I feel like I kind of losing hope because I'm not gonna find an answer. I'm just gonna be reliant with all this steroid, ointment medicines. For you, like after living with all these health issues, what kept you motivated, to keep going, like before you even found the root cause and like before you even carnivore?
So I have been passionate about health and wellness since I was about 21 years old. And I literally, and I'm a Christian. I believe that God is good and he is going to bring me what I need to know. Like he's going to intervene. I just was frustrated. And like you said, when you go through something over and over again and you can't find any help because you go to doctors and they're like, oh, just avoid it. Or, like, you're fine. Your labs look fine. We'll see you next year. They didn't really offer me any solutions. And then, you just believe that the system is broken and you believe that, your life is not going to change and that you're just going to be stuck in this. But then something happens, something amazing happens, and a friend will look at something and be like, oh, this might help her and call me up and tell me. So it's like I had the hope that something would happen. I just didn't know when it would happen and I didn't know how it would happen. But I'm so thankful because it's kind of a miracle because if I didn't go to that coaching school, I wouldn't have met him and he wouldn't have even, and he's been in so many things that have helped me over the years. And I've done the same for him, but it's just amazing that you can heal yourself because your body is powerful and it was created in such a way that it can heal itself, but you have to give it the right foods, the right tools. And when you give it processed foods and sugars and grains and seed oils, things that it doesn't understand, it's going to be in chaos all the time. And it's not going to know what to do or how to function properly. It'll just be in chaos because when you introduce things like artificial sweeteners and seed oils, your body doesn't know how to process them. It doesn't even know what you're giving it. It's not considered fuel. So I ate horribly for many years and then I realized so many things and I changed my diet and I was more into wellness. Now, it was kind of like the healthier version of the standard American diet. It was like veggie straws and chia seed pudding with cacao in it, and it was Ezekiel bread, all these kind of things. I thought I was eating really well because I was listening to my body. But I've learned that a lot of the issues that happen for women is they've believed the dogma and the lie of low fat for so long, and their hormones need the fat. And now they're scared of it, and they're like, I can't eat fat, it'll make me fat. Well, what's interesting is I went on high fat carnivore, and the fat was actually healing to my body, and I lost weight. Now, I wasn't eating sticks of butter a day. I'm just going to throw that out there because people do advocate for that. But your body does need fat, and it can just be in like fatty meat. But when you have basically withheld the nutrient dense food for so long, your body is starving, and you've tried all the diets and you've tried all the things to like fix that. What'll happen is when you actually eat nutrient dense food, you might overeat it for a little bit because your body is screaming for that. And it's like, wait, I know what this is. I know how to use this for fuel. So just changing mindset. And like for me, when I was told you need to eat fatty red meat, I was like, let's go. I mean, I'd already started eating it myself before I met with the doctor. And I was like, yes. So 80-20 burger patties are my favorite thing in the world. Right now, that's what I'm eating on the Lion diet. And it's been interesting because I haven't lost any weight, because I know we as women are just like the scale and the clothes and how we look in the mirror. But I've noticed that my body has just calmed down. It's like just made peace. And it's like, so that's worth so much to me because like I dieted for 33 years and like I was a binge eater and I was stuck in a loop, and I learned so much about cortisol and adrenals and thyroid function, and the thyroid needs fat in order for it to work. It also needs you to take care of yourself and like go to bed on time and stop staring at blue screens and, like not really taking care of ourselves and then expecting our body to do what it's supposed to do. So that's what I've learned over this time.
That's pretty cool. I feel like I know you mentioned earlier also about the 21-day transition, and I feel like not many people would stick with carnivore long enough to see the result, but you stuck with it, and many carnivore people to see the result, have stuck with it. Um, Before you were carnivore, what was your favorite food?
Okay, so is this before I had the gluten intolerance in 2010, or is this like between 2010 and 2022?
Yeah, pretty much. I guess let's go back to before you had those intolerance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the average things like pizza and subs and just processed food. Now, I was into wellness, don't get me wrong, but like these things I just thought you could moderate and you could like cut back and still eat that stuff. And then when this thing happened to me in 2010, it's like I went from, oh, so then I did the normal thing that you would do when you get a gluten intolerance. You go get all the gluten-free foods, right? And then you start consuming those, which are just full of processed food, sugar, grains. So even though the grains were gluten-free, it's just interesting. I loved eating veggie straws and chia seed pudding and sweet potatoes and turkey. So once this whole thing happened in 2022, I can't eat turkey anymore. My legs from my knees to my ankles swell up huge and they get eczema all over them. It's so interesting. I'm like, you got to wonder. So I stick with ruminant animals, pretty much just cattle, beef, because I don't do well on lamb, and I want to eat it because it's so healing, but it just does not agree with me. And I can't, it's hard to find good food that agrees with me. So I just go to either the local. Then we have a veterans market close by, and they raise cattle, so I can get some of their meat sometimes. But I stick with my Simple Truth natural burger patties. 6 come in a box. I just buy them out every time they go on sale. And that is my go-to. And, I don't know if you want to know about this, but like, it's funny. Well, let's go back to the 21 days. Most people would quit. But when you quit, you don't get to the solution. So, I mean, it's like crazy. I'm almost convinced that doing the Lion diet for the entire year is going to be the answer. I'm going to decide on the 1st of February if I'm going to stick with it or not. But so many people want instant results. and they don't actually do the research or the homework to figure out what will help them and how to go about doing it and being able to stick to that. So I just noticed there was a theme that everybody was talking about, and it was like, you need this 3 weeks because it's a little bit of work to transition fuel sources. And I was eating stuff that was just turning to glucose every time I ate. So it definitely was interesting to watch that happen and to see how weak and sick I got. But like I was holding on to 21 days with everything I had because it had to work. I was already going in the wrong direction, and like I couldn't find a solution when I was dealing with all of that stuff. So I knew this was going to work based on Dr. Ken Berry and, Dr. Kiltz and all the doctors that I have researched, and I believed them, and I will say that I have fallen off of carnivore too in my almost 3 years because I wasn't taking care of myself. I had a family member who ended up getting sick, and I just was under a tremendous amount of stress, and that caused problems with my cortisol and my adrenals. And I was thinking it was me and that I was, like I just was going backwards or something. And it wasn't that. It was that I needed to calm down and I needed to just trust the food and trust my body and trust God. So yeah, I come back from that, but it was a little bit of a hard situation because it was my dad getting sick, and and I wanted to change everything for him, and I wanted to make everything better. And I've learned over the past 2 years that you can't make other people do anything. And even if it's to save them, you can't do that. You have to let them make their own choices, which has been hard, but it's been okay. I've let it go, and I'm just, focused on helping other people now. So.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I hope your dad is doing well. Right, how's your dad doing right now?
He's doing pretty good. I mean, he has challenges. He has cancer, and then he also has heart issues. So it's just if it's not one thing, it's the other. But now I just navigate it with him. I go to all the appointments, but I don't tell him what to do, and I don't even try to bring anything into it because I worked really hard on it for 2 years, and it was a lot to go through. And I mean, he's doing pretty well right now. Just it's just a process.
Well said. Looking back at the start of your carnivore journey, because I know it's almost it's 3 years now, right? April 14th. Okay. Have you ever had a moment of doubt or like a crisis of faith? Like, was there ever a moment you almost gave up? Because 21 days to transition, it's like, oh, you know what? I'm already in the middle of this, but something's not clicking. But then you waited, Did you ever had a moment of doubt?
Well, if you're saying like going backwards and eating things that were like not carnivore, yeah, that's happened to me back when it just was the whole thing with my dad and stuff. The family thought that I was not leading him in the right way. So a lot of things were said, and it was very stressful. And like I felt like I had to grieve some things, and I did eat off carnivore, and I gained a lot of weight in a short period of time because I think that those foods are just so toxic to the body. And it taught me a great lesson. I hired this amazing coach that she's in the carnivore keto space. And I was on the balcony in Mexico with my dad. He was getting treatments in Mexico. And I was out on the balcony trying to have my coaching session. And I was talking to her, and she was like, look, it could take 3 months or it could take 3 years for you. You have to make a decision because it was my cortisol and it was this, but it was also choices. And I mean, I was eating well in Mexico because they didn't have very many things I could eat down there. So, but it was like, I decided in that moment that I had to make a change. I had to make a willful change to when I came back to the US, I was going to sit down and I was going to, with myself, I was going to make an agreement that I was going to eat just red meat and I was going to eat just carnivore, and I was going to let my adrenals calm down and let my body calm down so that I could actually feel normal. I don't know if I ever felt normal, but my normal. And it literally changed my life. So this coach literally in like 3 sentences changed my entire perspective about the way I was experiencing life and that I could make a choice. And so when I came back, I made a choice and it changed my whole life. I set some boundaries and I just stopped worrying about what everybody else thought of me and the way I eat and how crazy it is. And I just, took care of myself and just moved on.
That's pretty awesome. There's, being carnivore, there's a lot of hard things for me, like, social gatherings, traveling, cravings, or maybe like people like pushing you back. What's the hardest thing for you?
So I think the hardest thing for me is being able to have my food with me. So I have always done that for years. Even since 2010, I would take my food with me everywhere, gatherings, whatever. I didn't really care about that. I mean, people can be mean, but when I became carnivore, it became more important for me to always have my food. So at Hack Your Health in Tampa, I like had glass dishes with me, like people just, they didn't think anything of it because they understood the carnivore thing. But a lot of people don't have like histamine intolerance or mast cell activation syndrome, which I had that and I've been able to get over that. But it's like, it's hard because people don't understand why you do things and they can say things to you. They can say things about you, it just becomes like this big thing. So I think just getting thicker skin is something I've had to learn on, carnivore in general, but I've always been like a little different than everybody else and everybody thought I was weird. So it's not like too hard, but yeah, for sure. When we were in Mexico, I didn't know if I could find burger patties and we had to work really hard because there was only one store we could go to. And that store was Costco and they had a couple of people in there that could barely speak English and I was trying to explain. So they took me over and we looked through all the burger patties that were frozen until we found something. So that was scary to me because we went on the idea that they were going to provide food when we got down there to this place. And then they were like, oh yeah, we're not going to buy you. We're not going to feed you. And so I had a moment. I cried for a little bit and then I was like, okay, I'm just going to calm down. And then somebody took us to Costco and we were able to buy enough burger patties. So that was cool. But yeah, I guess the fear that I always have is what if I can't find food where I go? Like what if they don't have what I can eat, or what if it's not clean, or what if I react? So that's mostly the hardest thing. And that's why I usually I'm like, I literally cooked all my food, froze it. And then my suitcase, it was more important for me for my carry-on to have the ice packs because I have one that has like a section that's cold. And that was more important than what fit in the suitcase because yeah, it was very interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I felt that one. Yeah, I completely agree with you on the travel aspect because, when we go on vacation, I have to like scan the area, what's around. It's not going to be a lot, but, most of the time I bring my own food, already packed like for the next 3 days, but, just to like compensate for it. How does your family, your husband, I guess your dad, how do they feel about you go on carnivore? Are they the same? Are they in sync with your diet?
So my husband is he's eating sauerkraut right now because he heard me say something that I recently heard about, Carrie Mann was sharing some stuff and Sean Amara. And so he was excited for me to get him some sauerkraut. So he's eating that, but he eats steaks and burgers. And I've been teaching him about the impact of carbohydrates and, blood sugar and insulin so that he understands like when he's got too much glucose in there, then he's got too much insulin moving around and he really needs to, keep that lower. So we talk about it, but he overall is meat based and he eats a lot of eggs. My dad is not eating carnivore. He did at first and then it became a thing. It became a thing. So I just had to let that go because he didn't understand why in the world he would just have so few choices in his late 70s. He didn't understand that. And I was like, well, it's a nutrient dense food. And anyway, so I have let that lie. But yeah, overall, my other family, none of them eat carnivore.
Yeah, I see. What does a typical day of eating look like for you? I know you mentioned burger patties earlier. Do you keep things pretty much like consistent, or do you switch them up? Maybe you can walk me through like, if not daily or weekly.
Yeah, so let me tell you how it was before I started the Lion Diet on January 1st. So I would eat burger patties and I would take Vital Farms unsalted butter and turn it into ghee which I do that every 4 or 5 days. And then I have this amazing salt that I use that I found at Hack Your Health. And so I would eat egg yolks and drink coffee with butter in it. So and that's what I did for months and months and months. And then on the first, I decided to go lion diet. So I eat just burger patties, the salt, and water. And tallow. I eat it's regenerative farm tallow that I get at the local health food store. So I do a burger patty in the morning with some salt and tallow with it, and I go outside and let my battery get recharged with the sun. And then for lunch, I'll do 2 burger patties with salt and tallow. And then for dinner, I do 1 to 2 burger patties with some tallow and some salt. And I just drink water throughout the day, but I put electrolytes in my first water of the day and some salt. So I love some salt.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. With carnivore, if you had to describe the impact of carnivore lifestyle in one word, what would you describe it and why?
One word. I think I would describe it as freedom. And the reason I would say freedom is because it gives you the freedom to get rid of all of the symptoms and all of the illnesses and all of the weight. Some people don't lose weight right away, but like it just helps you to be free from all of that and to be able to focus on whatever it is you want to do with your life instead of chasing things and needing diets and, needing fixes. You can just let your body just calm down and just be, because it's so happy when you feed it nutrient dense food and you give it the fat that it needs. It helps your hormones. Everything's just calm and it's just freeing.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, that's my word, one word also to describe it. Freedom. It's just freeing the way, how simplify everything. You're not dependent of your emotion with the food. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. Can I just say
Knowing what you know
something?
now about, yeah,
Yeah, let me just say something.
go
So
ahead.
when you eat carnivore and when you eat nutrient dense fatty food, what happens is your brain gets rid of all the food noise. So instead of having thoughts of eating all day long and what you should eat and how you should eat and how much you should eat, you just literally like, huh. So the biggest problem I think for carnivores is they don't eat enough food. They think, and that's really not good. So they think that they can just eat a couple of steaks or a couple of burger patties and they're so full that they ignore their body. That is going to cause some major issues. So it's so important for people to eat enough, but also to know that they will eventually get rid of the food noise. Sometimes it takes a few days or a week or so, but it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. My food noise did not leave my mind for like quite a while, maybe even more than a year, because uh, you know, I was eating a lot of carbs, and I watch a lot of YouTube videos about food, and that's how I kind of like measure like how much food noise I'm getting, if it's still there, or if it's if it left my body. So, but
Hmm.
but yeah, I completely agree. Christina, knowing what you know now about carnivore and nutrition, like about this food being nutrient dense, like if you could give an advice to someone just starting, or maybe they have a chronic pain issue, but they're very skeptical. They're gonna get a heart attack because the media's been saying like, red meat is not good, and they're really delving deep into that. They're scared to get heart problems. What would you tell them?
So the first thing I would say is cholesterol is a necessary part of your body. Your body makes cholesterol even if you don't eat any. And so it's important to not be afraid of it because we've been told this for a reason. And I just want people to understand that when you are going to start carnivore and you don't have, let's say, a major thing like I did, you really want to start slowly because there's oxalate dumping, there's all kinds of things that happen. And if you can just take out some of the food that you're eating and transfer to something that's less toxic, like let's say oxalates for certain. Like if you're eating a bunch of sweet potatoes, you're going to want to find a low oxalate food that's not so damaging, because oxalates are bad. I just quit all at once because I had so many things going on. I would suggest that you start transferring out some of your high carb foods for lower carb foods, and then decide to start adding in, fatty meat, and to really focus on creating your why. Because when you have a strong, very clear why, you'll be able to do this when things get hard. But if you don't have a why, you'll quit easily. And if you don't have a plan of how you're going to start to really just remove things over time and just incorporate the things that you need to, and do your research. There are lots of amazing doctors on YouTube. Find a coach. I'm a coach. I help people to really transition on their terms. And I like to say that they're the driver and I'm the passenger with the map. Sometimes they just need help figuring out how to navigate all of that and how to get there, because it's so overwhelming. But just start slow and create your why. These are the most important things you can do.
That's excellent advice. Christina, just a thought like in my head, because I've interviewed a couple of people who they said they never experienced oxalate dumping, and they've been on the diet for maybe like 1 or 2 years. Is this like something very common with carnivore, or are they bound to get it maybe in the next couple of years, next couple of months? Is that like something natural, like within the carnivore lifestyle?
So I interviewed Sally Norton on my podcast recently, and we were talking about how some people experience oxalate dumping right away. Some people don't get it. They don't even know it's happening till like a year in, because then they have joint pain, because oxalates can go anywhere in the body. And when you stop eating oxalates, she explained that what will happen is your body will just start dumping them from everywhere, and it could cause all kinds of issues. So the fix for that would be, so for my husband, we were talking about, I interviewed her and then I was talking to him, and he was like, we got all these things going on. And I was like, try some black tea. If you can drink black tea, 3 tea bags in the evening, sometime in the afternoon, evening. And what that does is it introduces oxalates and it will calm down the dumping. So it will slow everything down. I can't do that. So I take some homeopathic remedies that help with oxalates. So that doesn't bother me. And I notice mine come out of my eyes. So I'll have like crystals all around my eyes when I wake up in the morning. So I'm taking this homeopathic remedy for, a while, so that it can help my body to slow down and calm down. And it will eventually get rid of all of them if you don't reintroduce them. So
I see. Oh, that's very nice. You spoke to Sally Norton. How do you see carnivore movement in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see carnivore going in the positive light or the negative light, or maybe a mix of both? Positive meaning more people joining in, learning about the carnivore lifestyle, because we're seeing a lot of healing, curing their diseases. And at the same time, negative would be a lot of pushback, media, big pharma, meat prices going high. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, so I think that more people will come on to carnivore because so many people are dealing with so many kind of illnesses that are just weird and unexplained, and they're not getting any answers. Now, I know with any good thing, I mean, people are going to become more open-minded and awake to carnivore, and they're going to be willing to try it. There will always be pushback. There will always be things like alpha-gal introduced into our environment through ticks. And there will be all kinds of ways that will try to prevent us from eating this way. But as long as we all stick together and we keep buying the meat and we, get locally sourced meat from farmers, then we will be able to continue sharing this with more people. I'm going to Kilt's coaching certification in just about 2 weeks, and I'm going to be learning how they talk about carnivore and keto and how to educate people in that exact space. It's very interesting to me that we've never been sicker, in this time. And people are becoming awake to it because they're tired of believing the same thing and not getting a different outcome. And I think that it's going to open up to more people. We just have to all keep sharing and keep offering carnivore as an idea or as a perspective to people who are dealing with lots of things. You know, telling people, I used to tell my family, they need to go carnivore, they need to go carnivore. And I interviewed Jenny Middich recently on my podcast, and she said, I don't convince anybody. I'm not a tugboat, I'm a lighthouse. So I thought that was a really good analogy of how we can share carnivore and be open and not be so pushy, because I know some of us can be so overzealous and excited about it that we're trying to force people that, you know, like they need to do it, they need to do it. But if we just keep sharing all of the positive things that are happening and all of the perspective, then I think people will open up to a new idea. And I think it will be a great impact to people around the world.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. Actually felt that one as well. Yeah, I'm one of those people when I started carnivore and then had a really good result in just 2 weeks, and I just started, pushing people to go carnivore, and then I found out later. I think you mentioned also with your experience, 2 years later, we learned that this is not the way. So, yeah, I completely agree. Cristina, if people want to reach out or connect with you, where's the best place to reach you?
So they can listen to my podcast on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you find podcasts. It's called Carnivore Lifestyle for Women, or they can go to my website, which is carnivorelifestyle.com.
Pretty awesome. Cristina, can you talk a little bit about your you being a health coach? What do you do with your clients who are not carnivore? Do they pretty much you adapt to their lifestyle first, get to know them? Yeah, can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I'm a master health coach, a life coach, and a certified personal trainer. And so what I do is I speak to women who are in midlife. They're between 40 and 60 years old, and I have a Facebook group, and I basically talk to them about low carb and carnivore. So I'm looking for women who are ready to make a change, who know that they're kind of going in a direction that's not serving them, and they want some help. So my Facebook group is open to women who are doing low carb, carnivore, or they're ready to learn how. And I really teach inside of my Facebook group and create posts in there that are just a lot about mindset and perspective, but also the basics of carnivore, the basics of, movement, and the basics of stress management and sleep, all the things that are important. And I really just want to support women in changing direction, making a U-turn, and being able to get the life that they want, not really chasing the old version of themselves, but becoming a new version of themselves and living their life the way that they always thought they would, but they just didn't have the tools or the guide to help them get there.
That's really impressive. Yeah, excellent. I'm gonna make sure also to post all of the links to in the description for people to so they can reach you. Cristina, thank you again for joining me today. I really enjoyed hearing your story and learning about your carnivore journey. I appreciate you taking the time to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.